What's up, guys? It's your girl Christina, tu vecina favorita que maquilla, and I am back with another Let's Chat video. So, okay, let me just say, I promise you guys, I have told myself I'm not going to keep talking about race. I've told myself this like umpteen times already. Not that I've talked about it a whole lot, but every time I do, I'm like, all right, it's going to be the last one. It's going to be the last one. The last video I just uploaded, my car chow, it's like, all right, after this one, I'm not going to keep talking about race. But damn it, man. I just see so much foolery online. And maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to stop being online so much and, you know, making myself available to see all this foolery. But it's like now when I see some stuff, it's like I just feel like I have to speak on it now. Especially when I see my fellow Dominicans kind of pushing some of this BS that I see online or just agreeing with it. That's when I'm like, nah. I have to say something. Somebody has to say something. So I know some people are not going to agree with some of the stuff I'm about to say, and that's fine. I already know anytime I make a video related to race, there's going to be some dislikes. Like, I'm prepared for that. I already know. But there's just certain things I don't want to see happening in DR, and I just don't want Dominicans thinking. So I have to speak on it, and that's that. So I decided to do this video in 2 parts because there's just a lot to cover here, and I'm not an expert on all of these things, but there's just so much to all of this, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but I didn't want to just, gloss over it either. So I will try my best to speak on this as best as I can, as I always do. Okay, so in this video, which is part 1, I will be speaking on race realism, okay, which is it's just another fancy way of racism, but they use science to back it up. And then I will speak on what I think of the whole debate on whether race is biological or whether it is a social construct. So that will be part 1. And then in my part 2, which maybe upload, I don't know, depending on when I upload this one, I might upload it some hours later. I'm not sure yet. But I will be talking about the same things, but applying it more specifically to Dominicans. Because again, some of these ideologies, they don't have no place in DR. Okay, I'm going to come on record and say it. White supremacy has no place in DR. Okay? And on the flip side, neither does some of these black extremists. I don't even know what you would call them, but basically I see a lot of people too saying, or I don't know, trying to get like mixed race people to denounce their European heritage. And I don't agree with that either. So I feel like as a Dominican, you cannot be for either side. Okay? No type of superior racial type of thinking like that. We don't need that in Dominican. Okay? We don't need that. All right? As a Dominican, you have to be for all races because Dominicans are all races. We are not just white. We are not just black. We are all of the above. So I do not believe in Dominicans pushing any type of racial superiority type of bullshit. All right. But again, I'll get to that in the second video. Okay. That will be part 2. So starting with part 1. Now bear with me, guys, because there's a lot of things here and I want to speak this as well as I can. Okay. So race realism. So the reason I'm even speaking on this is due to some comments that I've seen here on YouTube, and because another fellow YouTuber of mine who is also Dominican, she happened to have a conversation with a quote-unquote race realist who also happened to be a white nationalist, and she, told me about what some of the conversation was, and so it caused me to want to look up more about it, and it actually goes in line with some of the comments I've been seeing Dominicans make on here on YouTube. So what is race realism? So basically, this school of thought was very prevalent in like the 19th century, well, the 18th century too. And basically, these people believe that there is a biological link between race and certain characteristics, but most importantly, intelligence. Okay, so this is what people call scientific racism. Okay, so they believe that disparities in social outcomes, life expectancy, educational attainment, wealth, etc., that it's directly related to race. And they will use that to say this is why, you know, predominantly Black neighborhoods or countries are poor, or they have low IQs, or they're not as advanced as more whiter societies, you know, all that type of BS. And so, race realists, they use this very much to justify the enslavement of Africans, you know, in the Americas. And they basically say that, you know, white is a superior race, and that this is not just their own opinion, but that this is a biological fact. The white race, of all the races, they are superior, they're the most intelligent, and the black race is all the way at the bottom of the totem pole, which is what led to their enslavement. Okay, so the father of this movement was a man called Samuel Morton, and he lived in Philadelphia, and he lived in the early 1800s, and basically he would collect skulls, and he basically believed in 5 distinct races that had distinct characteristics which corresponded with this naturally determined hierarchy of races. So of course white was at the top. What else was in there? I think some type of Asian or Eurasian. There was 5, but basically white was at the top, black was all the way at the bottom, and he had a lot of influence in the South during that time. And so again, he would collect these skulls, and apparently based on his findings, the skulls of white people were bigger. Therefore, he concluded that white people were more intelligent. And this reminds me, if y'all have seen the movie Django, in the scene where Leonardo DiCaprio was holding up a skull, and I believe it was a skull actually of a black man, a slave or somebody that had passed away, but they said he was basically saying that there was like a part in the back which basically what was exactly, if you guys have seen this movie, y'all can refresh my memory, but it has something to do with that was why black people were they served white people. So again, just implying this whole correlation between the skull and the shape of it, and why white people are the way they are and why black people are the way they are. Now remember, this was before genetic testing, this was before DNA, so these people were basically pulling this shit out their ass. That's what I'm just gonna go ahead and say that, because there was no real scientific basis for what they were saying. Again, they just use this as a means to justify the enslavement of black people, pretty much. So this theory, it has been debunked countless times, especially with the advancement of science and DNA testing. There has been no study, no real scientific basis to prove this to be true. But you'll still find people, they'll still try to use this to justify their ethno-nationalist politics, especially white nationalists, you know, mainly here in America and in some other parts of the world as well. So this now leads to the question, is race in fact something biological, or is it what a lot of people now say, it is merely just a social construct? So by saying it is a social construct, what does that mean? It basically means that it is a man-made identity. It is meant to group people together that have like a common physical traits, lump them together, and to establish a sort of social dominance by the superior group. So I basically looked up, a lot of articles and certain studies just to see what actual scientists have said. Because at the end of the day, I don't care about what some simple white person says that has no real basis of science or whatever. So, I looked it up, and there's two ways you can look at it. So, from the social aspect of it. So, one scientist whose study I read said there is no cluster of genes that are common to all whites or to all blacks or to all Asians. That there is no such thing as that. And the simple fact that we can disagree on whether a person is black or whether they are white, especially when it comes to biracial people, that just shows that this whole concept of race is something man-made. Because basically different societies have made their own rules for determining, what race or what category a person can fall into. And of course, these categories, they can change. They're not consistent, which is like one of the main things here, because one, these classifications, they can change over time. For example, here in the US, mixed people have always been considered black, but now there's more that are leaning towards just saying they're mixed. And then, of course, it changes a lot, across cultures. For example, here in the US, I'm black, whereas in DR, me saying I'm mixed would be totally acceptable. They would just be like, yeah, you're una mulata, just a darker skinned mulata. So it varies. And, so historically, before genetic testing, these social constructs, these racial groups, it was primarily just based on phenotype. So, depending on how you looked, that would greatly impact, where you stood in society. For example, even here, even if you were light skinned, like granted, you were still considered black, or you're still labeled, within the black group, but you might have gotten slightly better treatment, So, race, basically like nation lines, it's arbitrary. With that being said, I do think to a large extent, race, it really is a social construct. It is. But that's not to say that there are not, genetic similarities or, differences amongst certain populations. Okay. So there are certain characteristics that are common to black people, such as, darker skin or certain facial features, just like there are certain characteristics that are more common to white people, such as fair skin, straight hair, blue eyes, stuff like that. So, of course, these things are not, you can't deny these things, but there's more of a shift now within, I guess, the scientific community to, instead of attributing them to a specific race, to attribute it to a certain population, to certain geographic populations. Okay, so that kind of changes things a little bit. And so, for example, in Europe alone, most people, according to, society's standard labeling, whatever, they would just call them all white. Europeans are all white. However, within Europe alone, there are many different features. For example, Northern Europeans are on average taller than Southern Europeans. So obviously there's certain characteristics that do not apply to all white people. And the same goes for Africans. I mean, the African continent in general is huge. And within that continent alone are so many different traits that could also be found in other races of the world. I mean, you have people that are super dark, but you also have people that are super light. You have groups of people that are very tall, just like you have groups of people that are very short. So you can find all these different type of, again, characteristics, different traits within the African continent alone. So yes, there are physical differences between people that are native to certain parts of the world. And, genes certainly reflect that, but they don't necessarily fall within these boundaries of a race, so to speak. So, these geographical things and adaptations is why sub-Saharan Africans have darker skin in order to protect them from, the rays of the sun. And why, Europeans or Northern Europeans that live in colder climates, why they have such fair skin, and so that they can absorb some of that sun. So again, it's more geographical adaptations that have become pretty prevalent in certain groups, more so than it is because they belong to a particular race. So I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I worded it good, but I hope you guys get what I'm trying to say. So basically, these characteristics that we associate with certain races, it's not so much due to their race, but due to the genetic adaptations that came out of being from this certain region of the world. And I read somewhere that the human race, we share like 99% of the same DNA. So we are genetically way more similar to each other than we are different. And it's like that 1% that creates all the different physical characteristics that we have, which is pretty crazy. So when you hear people say, "Oh, there's only one race, the human race," like, why do we care if you label like about white, blah blah blah? Like, they're actually kind of right. Yeah, like again, we are very similar. Now, I mean, of course, the white people, Caucasians, they do also have some of that was it Neanderthal DNA, but apart from that, genetically, we are much closely related to each other, or much closer related to each other than we are different. So that is my whole little spiel on what race is. So to use race as a way of justifying the treatment of certain people, or to say this is why these groups of people live in the conditions that they do and stuff like that, I consider to be completely wrong. Especially, I mean, just looking at, for example, Black people here in America. People say that the reason there's so much crime and this and that in the neighborhood is because of the simple fact that they are Black. But it's like, this is one of those things of like nature versus nurture, where I feel like it is overwhelmingly nurture, because you are a product of your environment. And some of you may have heard that LeBron James opened up a school, and I saw an article saying that the test scores of these children, which were like at high risk, they lived in high risk communities or whatever, they improved dramatically. And I'm almost sure that school is overwhelmingly like Black kids. So that just proves that we are a product of our environments. And that when you are put in an environment where you can flourish, where your needs are being taken care of, where you are encouraged to learn, that's what's going to happen. You're going to learn. You're going to, test well. Positive things will come out of that. So again, this whole certain things being due to people's race is BS. It is BS. And before I end this video, kind of leading on to what I will speak on in my next video. So I see some Dominicans sometimes say that because of our mixture, that is why we are better off than some other predominantly black countries. Okay, so when they so basically they're like, yeah, because these other countries are mainly black, that's why there's shitholes and this and that. And it's like, hello, we're not even like the richest country in the Caribbean. There are a lot of these predominantly black Caribbean countries have a much higher GDP per capita than the Dominican Republic does. And again, they're black countries. They're not mixed as much as we are. But that type of thinking, I don't like. And I don't like seeing Dominicans speaking so bad towards the black race, because we are part of the black race too. Of course, we're not only black, but that black mixture is all the way up in there. So I do not agree with Dominicans pushing this anti-black narrative or trying to push some white supremacist bullshit. I'm like, again, this has no place in the Dominican Republic. So we don't need it. We don't need it. And I know some Dominicans might not agree with me on that, but hey, this is not to say that we should, I don't know, aim to become a predominantly black country, because you always hear Dominicans saying, oh, we're going to become a totally black nation because of all the Haitians and this and that, which that is a whole other issue in itself. But again, let the white supremacy shit go. This whole thinking that the black race is inferior, let that shit go too, because hello, we are also black. Not entirely just black, but we are also mixed with black. So don't put down your own people. Don't put down your own, black Dominicans by saying this stuff too. Like, I don't like that at all. I don't. So with all this being said, this concludes part 1 of my video, and stay tuned for part 2.